The restaurant was almost empty, the kind of quiet that comes when the city finally starts to sleep. Chairs were stacked, lights dimmed, and the only sound left was the soft scrape of a cloth on a tabletop. A young woman moved from one corner to another, wiping tables with tired hands, her eyes heavy but calm. She didn't notice the small boy sitting near the window, watching her with quiet curiosity. His father, a businessman lost in his phone, barely looked up, but the boy kept staring at her, at the way she smiled faintly to herself, even though no one was around to see it. She looked too young to be that weary, too kind to be that alone. Her uniform was slightly faded, her shoes worn out, but there was something graceful in the way she carried herself. When she dropped her rag and bent to pick it up, the boy's small voice broke the silence. "Daddy," he whispered, tugging at his father's sleeve. "She has no one." The father looked up, startled, his gaze landing on the girl for the first time. Something about her expression, that quiet sadness hidden behind a polite smile, made him pause. For a brief moment, their eyes met, and an unspoken story passed between them. Who was she? What had brought her here at this hour? The father didn't know yet, but that one whisper from his son would soon change everything. The father couldn't shake off what his son had said. She has no one. The words echoed in his mind as he watched the young woman move quietly through the empty restaurant. She looked like someone who had learned to live with silence, who carried stories she never told. He noticed how she paused now and then, glancing toward the clock as if waiting for something or someone who would never come. Her hands trembled slightly as she folded napkins, but her face stayed calm, almost practiced in hiding exhaustion. The boy kept watching her too, his little eyes filled with concern far beyond his years. "Can we help her, Daddy?" he asked softly, but the father didn't know how to answer. He was a man used to closing deals, not opening hearts. Yet something about her presence unsettled him. It wasn't pity, it was a strange pull, a quiet reminder of how fragile life could be. When she finally noticed them watching, she gave a small nod, forcing a smile. "Sorry, sir, we're closing soon," she said politely. Her voice was soft, almost breaking. The father nodded, but instead of leaving, he found himself asking, "Do you always work this late?" For a moment, she froze, eyes wide, as if no one had ever cared enough to ask before she could answer. The restaurant's door creaked open, and a cold gust of wind rushed in. A shadowy figure stepped inside, and her face suddenly went pale. The figure who entered was tall, wrapped in an old jacket, his face partly hidden by the dim light. The woman's hands froze around the cloth she was holding, her eyes filled with quiet fear. The father noticed the sudden change in her posture, the way her shoulders stiffened, how her calm expression vanished. The man walked toward the counter, his voice low but rough. "You still here this late, Mira?" he asked, and the way he said her name made the boy's father glance at her, realizing he was hearing it for the first time. She tried to sound steady, just finishing up. "You shouldn't be here." Her tone was polite, but something trembled beneath it, not anger, but worry. The boy, sensing the tension, gripped his father's hand tightly. The man at the counter leaned closer, muttering something neither of them could hear. Whatever he said made Myra's eyes glisten for a second before she turned away, pretending to clean again. The father wanted to step in, but he hesitated. This wasn't his world. He didn't even know her story. Yet, as he watched her quietly endure the stranger's presence, something in him stirred, a feeling of responsibility he couldn't explain. Outside, the rain began to fall, tapping against the windows like restless fingers. The boy whispered again, "Daddy, she's scared." The father knew it too, but when he finally stood to speak, the man in the jacket turned toward him slowly, eyes sharp with a warning that made his next words die in his throat. The air inside the restaurant grew heavy, the quiet hum of the lights now sounding louder than before. The man in the jacket stepped closer to Mira, his voice dropping low enough that only she could hear. Her face tightened, and for the first time, she took a step back. The father rose slowly from his seat, his instincts kicking in, though he still didn't understand what was happening. The boy clung to his arm, whispering, "Daddy, please help her." Mira tried to keep her voice steady. "You need to leave. I told you, I don't have anything left." The words trembled as they left her lips. The man smirked, tapping the counter with his fingers. "We both know that's not true," he said softly. The father caught just enough of their exchange to sense the danger beneath it. He moved closer, pretending to look for his wallet, his heart racing. The restaurant felt smaller now, the walls closing in. The rain outside had turned into a downpour, streaking the glass with long trails of water. Lightning flashed, and for an instant, the man's face came fully into view, tired eyes, stubbled jaw, and something cold behind his expression. Mira's breathing quickened as she reached for her apron pocket. Her hands were shaking, but her gaze was firm now, filled with quiet defiance. The father stepped forward, ready to speak, but before he could, the man's voice cut through the air, calm yet threatening. "You should stay out of this, sir. This isn't your problem." The father froze, his pulse quickening at the warning in the man's voice. The boy's small hand gripped his tighter, and Mira's eyes silently pleaded for him not to interfere. But it was too late. He was already part of it. The man in the jacket took a slow step forward, lowering his tone. "She owes me something," he said, "and I've come to collect." His words hung in the air like smoke, thick with tension. Mira's lips trembled, but she didn't look away. "I told you, I paid what I could. You said it would be enough." Her voice cracked. And the father suddenly realized this wasn't just about money. It was about something deeper, something personal. The man laughed under his breath, shaking his head. Enough? You really think kindness clears a debt? The father couldn't stand still anymore. That's enough, he said firmly, stepping between them. You need to leave. The man's eyes flicked to him, cold and sharp. You really don't know who you're protecting, do you? He said quietly, reaching into his coat pocket. The boy gasped, but instead of what they feared, he pulled out a folded photograph and tossed it onto the counter. Mira's face went pale as the picture slid toward her. The father glanced down. It was a photo of a little girl, smiling, holding Mira's hand. You left her behind, the man whispered. And now? They've found her. Mira staggered back, her breath catching. No, she whispered. That's not possible. Mira's knees almost gave out as she stared at the photograph. The little girl's smile felt like a ghost from another life, one she'd buried under long shifts and endless nights. Her voice shook as she whispered, "Where is she?" The man didn't answer right away. He just looked at her with something between pity and anger. "Safe," he said finally, "but not for long, if you keep running."